is Susan Ashley, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Susan&Kassandra. I'd like to continue on our conversation with regards to demons and darkness. And what I'd like to talk to you about today, so before I do, like, subscribe and do all of that, because I'm not very good at social media, as you can see, and I'm not a salesperson. So if you could do that, that'd be great. Please share these videos. I'm making them to help therapists. I'm making them to help people understand this energy and work with it. I worked with it. I dedicated my life to this for many, many years. And the reason I stopped was because I had a child and I decided I didn't want that child to be in any way connected to that energy. I do occasionally work with people. It depends what my heartstring tells me to do. I still occasionally work with them and have done through the whole thing, even though I said I wouldn't do it. I started specialising in something else. I moved into a totally different field. So what I moved into was working with people who, had blocks and wanted to achieve things that were being held back. So I was working more with people who felt stuck in their lives, not necessarily this sort of abuse. And that brought me also a lot of pleasure and understanding. And I used the knowledge around sexual energy, creative energy, and money that I learnt from working that to help people move forward in their careers and help people understand their own frequency and make the right decisions. So I know that sounds really weird, but that's what I did. And then occasionally I'd have an old colleague ring me and say, look, we've got this person, I don't know what to do, would you be willing to help? And I'll help, So I'm there to guide, I'm there to help you, I'm there to give advice, and particularly other therapists. Look, I'll be honest with you, over the years I've had people, like most of us, take some of the knowledge and start using it, like in an inappropriate way. And I've actually gone to those people and said, look, I'm happy to train you. I'm not even going to charge you. I'll train you, work with me, work beside me, one day a week. When I get these sort of clients in, sit in on it. I'll show you what to do. I'll teach you. No, they don't want to do that because they don't want to spend a day not earning any money. But I'm not charging them, by the way. But no, they don't want to do that because they're coming from ego. You can't do this work if you're coming from ego. You have to come from the heart because you have to hold the space of the heart, which I explained before. So as a therapist working in this, and part of the reason that I'm not a part of any association or anything is because when you get a license to practice, you have to come under certain associations, and obviously you pay for that, but also you come under rules and regulations, which I don't like, because in that frame it really restricts you as to what you can do with people. Because just as an example, I believe that human connection is one of the big things that we all yearn for and is missing. And when you've got someone who's been severely abused, human touch is something they'll recall at. They don't like it, or they become numb. They have a reaction to it. So I would recommend that they go to a massage therapist that I knew, and I would ring that therapist up and say, look, can you just massage their back, or just their feet, or just their hands? Don't do anything else. Do you know how hard it is to find someone that will do that? A real massage therapist that will just follow the sensitivity of the person that's there. It's not so easy. So I was very, very grateful and lucky that I met people who are incredible. And it's like that. But also in the sessions, we're taught as therapists not to touch the client, not to touch the patient, not to, but I would hug them, I would, stroke their back. I wouldn't, obviously, that's where unfortunately, some therapists cross the line, and that's why all these rules and regulations were brought in, because they couldn't, they just couldn't help themselves. They took advantage of someone who was vulnerable and weak. And that in itself, like I've heard a therapist say to people, I mean, I'm gobsmacked when I hear this shit. Really gobsmacked. Oh, well, okay, to get over I told you the story about that couple, but, you know, I've heard it from not just one, but from many. I would say in my time, at least over 100 women have told me that their therapist has told them that if they strip naked in front of them, it's going to heal them. You know, if they sit with them naked and let them touch them and do shit like that, that it's going to help them. Now, if you wanted to go to a sex therapist, you go to a sex therapist, right? But you're not going to a sex therapist. You're going to someone who's trying to help you get over sexual abuse. So manipulating someone into getting naked because you're telling them that it will help them is really, really, really wrong. Really wrong. And this shit goes on, you know. But anyway, today I wanted to talk to you about a little bit deeper about what I discovered around this, but also what I experienced as a therapist, so that those of you out there that are thinking or even working with people at the moment, because a lot's coming out now. A lot of people are waking up, and as they wake up, remember I told you there are those that forgot and those that remember, that have clear memory. Those that have forgotten are starting to wake up and remember. And it's because the general frequency of the planet is raising, and they need help. They need help to unravel this. So if you go in as a therapist, I don't want to scare you. I want to empower you with this, because I used to feel that I was the only one who could help people, that it was all on my shoulders, and I worked 7 days a week around the clock, which meant that if someone rang me at 3 a.m. in the morning and said, I'm having a flashback, I'd talk them through it. If they rang me freaking out, crying, I'd talk them through it. I was 100% devoted. I didn't have a life of my own. And obviously that was my issue, that I needed to create boundaries in my own life. But I also knew that in creating boundaries, I had to be very clear that I wasn't distancing myself from people. They need to connect with you, because the connection that they've had with the abuser is enmeshed. And for a period of time, they enmesh themselves with you. And it's a way of healing. It's a way of bringing them up to your vibration. And when I say enmesh, I don't mean go and have, you know, inappropriate touching and shit like that. I mean they mesh with you psychically. They feel a comfort from you psychically. And so you as a therapist, like I would wake up in the morning with a message for someone, or you know, it still happens today with people that I'm close to. So you get enmeshed with them, you want to help them, and it's your frequency that actually raises the frequency for them to meet you. That's what also happens in relationships as well. So I wanted to just cover some of the things that can happen to you so that you don't get afraid. Because like I said, what the demons will do is they'll try to attack you through your mind, through your thoughts, but they can also use people to scare you. And they can, depending on the demon, they can actually appear before you, and they can create physical sensations and experiences. For instance, I had a demon bite me on the inside of one of my legs one night. I was working with, depends on the person that you're working with too, because, and the level of darkness they're unfortunately attached to, you know, you get attacked for releasing them sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. Most of the time, like I said, there's laws that they work under. So if you understand those universal laws in dark and light, you understand that there are rules and regulations. And but occasionally you get a rogue one. And so, you know, I was woken up in the night with this thing biting into my leg, and I had bite marks and a physical bruise for about 10 days afterwards. Totally freaked me out. Another one was not so long ago, actually. It was only a few years ago. I had someone from England came over and saw me, and they were part of like a cult that, you know, was going into these tunnels. It was a bloodline situation. And after I removed the demonic connection that she had through that, remember I talked about the initiation of marriage and stuff to the demons? Yeah, once I removed that, I went for a walk, you know, because often I'll go for a walk or I'll do something to clear my head afterwards. So I went for a walk afterwards down the beach. I was bitten by a dog, and I was bitten on the back of the leg by a big black Alsatian. And as it bit me, I heard the words, "Fuck you, bitch," right? Really loud in my head. The dog came up from behind me. I had, you know, it was really awful, because it was really this demonic energy was like, you know, I'm paying you back for doing this. So it said, you know, F you, bitch, and bit me. Drew blood. I was freaked out. Ran down the beach. I actually ran in the water, and a man came and put his body over the dog to stop the dog, because the dog then went for my neck. So it was pretty hairy. And other things, like once I went to see a client at their home, which I rarely would do. I mean, rarely do. And this was a young man who, you know, he was coming home from school one day on his push bike. And you see, what we think that it only happens to little girls, because we think little girls are, you know, vulnerable, they're not as physically strong. And we think of our little boys, our sons, as being more physically strong, more feisty. You know, they're going to run, they're going to stand up to that boogeyman. They don't, actually. And I can tell you now that 50%, it was almost like a direct line, 50% of my clients were men. And it's sometimes harder for them, because they think they should be able to protect themselves, and they think that they should, and it's harder for them to say anything either, because there's a dignity about being a man that gets completely crushed. Their pride, their ego, everything gets completely crushed. So this young man was you know, going home from school one day on his push bike, and he was riding through a park. And, you know, as a parent, you think they're perfectly safe, they're okay. And these two guys, you know, came up and said, "Hey, you know, what are you doing on the bike? You show me your bike," you know, talking to him, like, "Show me your bike, interesting bike, great colour," etc. And they dragged him into the public toilets, and they started a process of abusing him. And by the end of it, you know, this poor young man was basically, you know, sold off to every pedophile in the village, kind of thing. You know, they used to torture him by burn marks around his anus. You know, they would put out their cigarettes, they would shit on him, urinate on him, make him eat their shit, make him drink their urine, rape him, and tell him, you know, you're worthless. This is what you are. You're just a piece of shit. This is the stuff that goes on, and they weren't part of a cult, by the way. This wasn't a satanic cult. This was just a normal bunch of pedophiles. And I say normal bunch of pedophiles because everyone thinks, oh, you know, that guy was diddling that little kid at school or down the road. That's the only one they touched. Never, never, never do they just touch one child. Never. And if you're in a family and you think as a child, oh, I'm you know, saving my siblings by, you know, doing this, that's not true either. They're having the siblings as well. So they never just affect one child. That is not the case. And the demons are actually working through them to behave like this. Some of them, a lot of them, it's happened to them, and they're just continuing on, and that's the mixture of violence, fear, and sexuality becomes intoxicating, and that's the only way they can express themselves, is with that mixture of energies, and that's what they do. And so this, you know, young man was tortured, raped, passed around, and his big pain out of all of that was the fact that he willingly went in the end every day. That was his crusher. The crusher was that he willingly took himself there to their house every day after school. And he never told anyone. And he started to wear a lot of clothing to get severe acne and stuff like this. And anyway, he had a name for himself. He called himself Filth. That was his nickname. So I went to his house one day because he was freaking out about something, I don't know. And there are certain, you understand this when you're a therapist, obviously you get attached to everyone, but there would be certain souls that, really get to you. They get deep down in your soul. See, you have to have humanity to work with these people. You can't turn yourself off. So when you go to a psychiatrist that's just dishing out tablets and listening but not really listening, time's up or whatever, they don't have any humanity. They're not really connecting, and that's why nothing happens for these people. Even if they had humanity and they didn't know what to do, but they just listened and believed what that person was saying, that would co-create a healing for that person. Because it would bring them a sense of, oh my God, relief. Somebody finally believes me and understands me. Someone finally is with me on this. I'm not alone. That's what it does. So I went to his house, freaked out, and remember I said to you that some have no memory and some, he had full memory. He remembered everything. So he couldn't work. He couldn't function as a normal person. He couldn't have a relationship as a normal person. I mean, it was just horrendous. So yeah, I went to his house where he lived. He lived on his own. He couldn't live with other people. And I walked in. I remember the house looked really, like, you can imagine, dirty, dumpy, everything. I was a little bit afraid when I walked in, but I was even more afraid when I ran out, because when I went in, he was, just sort of hysterical on the floor. And I sat down in a chair and in the lounge room, and this demon walked straight up to me and said, "You bitch," and it just slammed me out of my body, like my spirit out of my body. And I remember like getting slammed energetically, and my body went, like my spirit went this way, my body was there, and I was looking at my body and I went, far out, I'll get back in the body. I went back in the body and the spirit said, "Get out of here." And I ran out of the house. I was shaking and I was like, oh my God, I'd never experienced anything like this, because basically what it wanted to do was slam me completely out of my body and take over. So you can imagine if a demon had taken over me and the work that I was doing. And so, hence to say, there are a lot of therapists out there that, they've been taken over. So I wanted to share that with you, so that, not to scare you, but now I want to share why he didn't kick me clean out of my body, and why I was able to hold the space how I was able to hold the space for these people and not allow the darkness to destroy me, because it can. I mean, that's just a couple of stories. I could tell you heaps, and I'll often think about them. Something will happen, I'll get triggered, and I'll remember, oh yeah, that's right, that happened. Completely forgot about that. Because, there were times when I didn't sleep, when I was just wide awake at night. I was scared to close my eyes, and I just couldn't sleep. And I'd think about these clients and the stories that I'd heard during the day, and particularly when I first started, because I just couldn't figure out why me. I was like, why me? I don't know that much. I didn't even know my own full sexuality. I was a young woman. I didn't really understand myself, let alone listen to these sort of things all day. And when I say all day, I didn't do hourly appointments, okay? I would do some of my appointments. I'll usually give about 2 hours, But if it's their first and I get a sense of it, I might just give it on an afternoon when I'm completely free, and I could spend 3 hours with the person. So if you think, oh my God, she must have been making a lot of money, I can tell you now that a lot of my clients couldn't work because they had full memory, and I did it by a donation, and I used to get $1, $2. There were the ones that came from the bloodlines that had the wealthy families, and I used to charge them quite a bit, but so that kind of compensated. But some weeks I found it hard to pay my rents because, I had 2 rents. I had the rent on the place I was working from and the rent on the place I was living at. And like I said, I used to live, this was before the internet, and you didn't have to give your credentials to rent a place or to do landline because there was no mobiles or electricity. I could give any name. So everything was in another name. And I've changed my name 4 times. So even just finding that sort of stuff out, it's hard for people to find me. And now I'm sort of coming out because it's time. I wanted to do this years ago, but I didn't feel the balance of dark and light was the right moment. And I know that's the same for a lot of you that have been having all this inside, knowing all this knowledge, having all this information and feeling held back that you couldn't, or even telling people, look, I like I said, I had a radio show. I used to talk about some of the stuff, not obviously not what I've just spoken about and the other stuff that I spoke about on the other videos. But, I'd sort of approach the subject and people would just slam me, really bad. I remember once I had at the front of the clinic, the freaking Christians, with the protesting what I was doing because they thought I was doing exorcisms, which in a way I was. So they thought I was the devil incarnate. Interesting. I've been called the devil many times, the devil incarnate. That's kind of interesting for me. I remember one woman came to me once and she said, I'm probably working with one of the members of her family. She said, I know, dear, she was older than me. She said, I know, dear, you think you're doing good, but the devil's working through you. And you really need to look at, your work and what you're doing because the devil's working through you. And I had meditated that morning and my guides had told me, okay, someone's going to come and this is what they're going to say. This is your reply. So I just listened to everything. She talked for about half an hour, really hammered on about how evil I was and everything. And I didn't react at all. I just kept taking a breath and I kept, just sort of talking to guidance or whatever, having a conversation with myself. I just looking straight at her, having a conversation with myself. And when she was finished, I didn't hear much of it. When she was finished, I said to her, gee, that took a lot of courage to come here and say that to me. I'd really like to thank you for sharing that with me. Have a nice day. Thank you. Goodbye. She left really calm. All this anger and stuff that she had, she was just spewing out at me, Suddenly she went really calm and she just got up and walked out. See, because when we fight, this is the secret, when we start fighting with it, when we try to fight with a demon and throw it into the light, we try to fight with it and not accept that reality as real. Her opinion was real about me. She honestly thought that's what I was doing. And I'll tell you something, who I was working with was her grandson, 8-year-old grandson, now it's all coming back to me, who I used to do sand play with kids, where you create an image, you get them to create an image of the family in the sand, and they have all these symbols, like you have animals, houses, trees and all that, and they place it, they create a beautiful image. And what he had done was a funeral. And he had buried the very grandmother that was, coming in and yelling at me. He'd buried her and he was doing a funeral and he was getting rid of the darkness in the family. That's what he said to me. And so what you do with kids, because their imagination is so fertile and so good, and their cognitive reaction to things is quite astounding. They're very pliable. And so what you do with kids, you get them to do that and then you talk about it. You look at the symbolism of it and you talk about it with them and then you have a little chat, and then you say, what would you like your family to be like? And then they make another one and then they explain the next one. And that's the image that stays in their mind about their family. So that it's sort of like a shift and a healing that happens. It's fascinating how that happens with kids. Anyway, so that's what happened. When you work with people, sometimes you get attacked. It's just the way it is. You get attacked by all sorts of people, and often people that you honestly couldn't even believe they would attack you. I don't do a lot of, interviews. Oh, there's only one thing that I do interviews with now, but I didn't do them. You won't see much there, because unless I write it myself and it's printed in exact words that I've used, or I have a relationship with the person who's interviewing me, and then I can read what they've written. So I have authority over what's been written and what I've said, and I'm not misquoted. I won't do it, because in the early days I did. I talked up in the 80s, and they made me out like a friggin', The Exorcist, with my head turning around and round. It was horrible. I felt like crap because they misquoted me a few times, a few different things. And then, I was offered, once I was offered to go on 60 Minutes actually, but I refused because I knew. And this woman that I knew did it instead, and they persecuted her. They crucified her on television. It was terrible. I'm so glad that I didn't do it, because they come to you and they say, "Oh no, we want to do something really explaining to people your work. We really like what you do. We really feel this is of value." And then they do a whole load of shit. Really, they do. So that's why I don't do it. Anyway, I'm digressing. So you know that when you work with these sort of energies, they're going to attack you. And the one thing that stops that from they're going to attack you. Either way, they're going to attack you. I rarely get attacked now, but it still happens occasionally. Like I did a few years ago with the dog bite. And some people might think that is, oh yeah, that's just a coincidence. It's unfortunate. I don't think so. I just did that work that morning, and then that afternoon I got bitten by a dog, and I hear these words in my head. No. Once I was, we lived in this building. We're on the top floor, and it was stairs going down. And at the bottom of the stairs, there was a door going to the, outside of the building, the hallway door. And I had been working with some. I wasn't living in Australia. I was living in another country, and there they had a lot of this sort of witchcraft going on. People who were doing spells on people, like, you could go and you could pay them money to put a spell on someone, so that you could get their job, or you could get their part of the house, like relatives and things. Oh, it's crazy, but that's what they do. And I had interrupted one particular person who was selling her wares, kind of thing, and they didn't like it. So I was going downstairs to meet someone, and as I got to the foot of the stairs, I had my phone at that time. This was just a few years ago. I had a mobile phone, and I heard the words "die bitch" in my head, and then literally I felt someone push me, like their hands push me, and I dived head first down the stairs, and the door was open, and I hit the top of my head. I still have a scar there. I've got a big dent there. I hit the top of my head square on that door, full pelt, and it was probably about 12 stairs. So I was airborne, it wasn't just 3 stairs and what have you. And when I hit the door, again I heard "die bitch," and I heard "this is it." And I passed out. I don't know how long I was passed out for, but when I woke up, my head was like a blood kind of mess. So I rang the friend that I was going to meet, and I said, "Look, I've had a fall. You have to come in and get me." And that friend happened to have keys to our apartment because they used to sometimes house sit for us. So he came, and then I said, "I think you need to ring another friend who was a healer. Ring them, tell them what's going on." Because I refused to go to the hospital, and I'll tell you why. Because the hospitals often, look, I'm not saying all of them, but there are often demonic energies working in hospitals that they would have killed me if I'd have gone in there with a head injury. I wouldn't be here today. So I got this message, you can't go to the hospital, you have to be here. So they, between the two of them, figured out what to do with me. I'll tell you what. And it happened to be that my husband wasn't there at the time. He was away in another country. And so I didn't have him. And my head was like so swollen, but down to here. And I had like blood under the flesh in these big bags. It was just horrendous. And it took a good month to heal. I'm sure people thought that my husband had bashed me or something, but no, that's what had happened. And you know, that's a result of sometimes these energies, they go against the laws of the universe and they'll just like get you like that. So that's another thing that happened to me. And the reason it didn't kill me is because I have a connection. And how I have that connection is through facing my fear of the connection, right? Because when you're little and you're having these things, and all kids do it, You know, some kids have the night horrors. Babies, children, when they have night horrors, that's kind of like gaining that connection, and they have to go through the astral. They go, and there's often like demons and scary things that are trying to stop them. So they have nightmares and they get stuck there. And then, of course, parent comes in and the kid's screaming and they can't, they're like they're in an altered state and they can't bring them back into this world. That's what happens. They get stuck. These demons try to get a hold of them. And that scares them from connecting. So it's really important how you handle those sort of things as well. Anyway, getting back to this, I started meditating in my early 20s. I told you I had this, at the university, they did this course on transcendental meditation, and I think it was the third time I started astral travelling, and then all hell broke loose in my life. But I had a big awakening, and then I just kind of went into other forms of meditation because it brought me great peace. So going into your heart and feeling peace, where most of the time that's meditation, but it could be even swimming, it could be drawing, you know, painting, doing sculpture, could take you into that altered space and bring you to that heart-centered peace, even playing music. So there's these things that you can do to bring you into your heart space, but you have to consider yourself selfish enough to put that into your schedule every day. So for me, I used to meditate for an hour every day. Look, I don't have to meditate for an hour a day now. If I do 10 minutes, I'm doing well. I'll often do more than that, but 10 minutes is good if I'm in a hurry. That's enough to connect me and really get me in that heart space that I love and that keeps me safe. Because when I'm in the heart space, I'm safe. And I know there's a lot of airy-fairy people out there, and we call them woo-woos or what have you. I'm probably one of them. That think being in the heart space is coming from here. So they say, yeah, I'm in the heart, they repeat a mantra, I'm in the heart space, I'm in the heart space. But they're still here. So shit keeps happening to them. No, you have to feel it. You have to go into that space of your heart and feel that peace and that bliss that just resonates from you. And often when you start meditating, you know, meditation is actually about releasing your mind. It's not about stilling the mind and concentrating on a mantra and concentrating on an image. It's actually about allowing everything in your mind to become empty. So in order for the mind to become empty, we have to release what's in there. So often the first few months of meditating is just mind shit coming out. So that's why it's a good idea to go to a Buddhist retreat where you can do 3-day or 10-day silent retreats where you're meditating from 6 in the morning till 8 in the evening in silence. You don't talk, and even in those other times you don't talk. So, and this is extremely important, because what that does is it empties the mind of all the thoughts. So for the first 2 days you can be, basket case, you can be shaking. I've participated in them a number of times and people have left. On the second day usually they leave because they can't take it, because their mind, they want to take control of their mind, and their mind's just, and when you're with the monks and they're doing mantras and things, it's just rippling out of you, and all these thoughts come into your head and you're like, far out, I'm going crazy. So the idea is to let the thoughts come up and out and just go, okay, I'm thinking about dinner, or I'm thinking about this person or whatever. That's fine, I'll do that later and let it move on. That's what you do to be able to get to that state of emptiness. And it's from that state of emptiness that you really, really connect with the universe of light. And so this is something I really wanted to share with you today, because if you can get to that centered space, the darkness doesn't have a hold on you, and it can't take over, and it can't really affect you. So I might have been slapped out of my body, I might have been pushed downstairs, bitten by a dog, and all of these things, and sometimes worse. I mean, I've had some pretty horrendous, where you feel like your whole aura from a group of demons. When it gets into the group thing, that can be pretty heavy. A group of demons ripping open your aura. Couldn't work for a month. So you have to be in your heart and you're ethical, because when this shit happens, you can't work. You can't work until you're closed up again, until you're at one again. Because if you try to work whilst you're in that state, because you think you have to earn the money and everything, you don't know what you're aligning to. And when you work, you get tired and you open up. You have to open up to do this sort of work. So, yeah, no, it's not a good idea. And I can hear people saying, but what do I do for a living? Well, have you got friends that can help you, family that can help you? Often we healers attract partners who have normal jobs, like I do, who earn a good living, so that we can do this work and we can move around with time frames and things like that. Usually you find that it works out. If you're coming from the heart space will actually bring into your life exactly what's needed for you to heal. Whether that's money, time, a venue, a person, it will come. And you don't get there in your head. So with that, I would like to also say that understanding the darkness, remember I said if you're in resistance, if you fight it, it'll get worse. I'm not saying surrender to it. I'm just saying acknowledge it and accept that it exists. Because we fight with something when we don't want it. I don't want that. No, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to know about it. We're in resistance. And when we're in resistance, it has a hold on us. But when you say, like I could have said, the dog biting me, for instance, and the word I got in my head, I could have justified that till the cows come home and been in resistance. But instead I accepted it. Yeah, this is directly related to what I did this morning. But you know what? I don't care, because now I know that person is free. And I know 100% without any shadow of a doubt, I know that every single person who has been abused on any level has a above average light frequency, and it's been done to them for a reason. So I know when I help these people that I am amplifying the frequency of light on the planet in a huge way. I'm not just adding one person to it, because when a person has been opened up like that, it means that they are also a channel. So they can channel through energy. Remember when I spoke about, being a healer, and it's not just you, that if you were just giving the energy, you'd be exhausted, that it's all the beings that work through you. Well, when a person realigns with the light and accepts what happened to them and isn't in resistance anymore, then they totally amplify the light beings that are working with them. And they are now a channel, a conduit for that light. So their light becomes 1,000-fold, 1,000,000-fold. You can keep going. You know, I can often look at a person and know just how many people they're impacting. It's a weird thing. When you think that you're just impacting, oh, you know, I'm just a simple person, I don't have a big voice, you know, hardly anyone listens to me. Yeah, but it's your energy that's impacting. You know, I've just got my friend or my husband, or I live with my parents or whatever, I'm not impacting anyone. Actually, you are. Every time you walk down the street, you're impacting a whole load of people with your light. You're sending out a ripple of that light to everyone so that they can join you. So when you work with someone, know. That's why I say, you know, teacher, student, master, healer, master, servant. It's separation, it's duality. It shouldn't exist on this planet at this moment with the amount of awareness that we have. We've got to stop doing that crap. Because when you work with people like that, your goal is to get them to align so strongly with the light that they become a force on the planet that ignites the love that's there. And they have been deliberately injured so that they're not connected to that light. But they still have a little string of light there, so that's why they're searching. That's why you search for things. I hope that's helped you today. And I hope that's not scared you at all, because, you know, my husband listened to the video I did yesterday. He goes, oh, I was a bit scared when I listened to that. And I said, don't worry, love. None of that will happen to you. Know that your light is your protection, and that you are loved, and there's always someone there to help you. You're not alone. So I'm going to love you and leave you and trust that you get the help that you need. Bye for now.